All right. I'm pleased to introduce our next session and the moderator. The moderator of the session is my colleague, Sarah Weber. She's the president and CEO of C3 Alliance. She's moderating the next session titled Powering BC's Future, BC's Evolving Energy Landscape. It's going to be a great session, so let's get started, and let's welcome them to the stage.
Thank you so much, Logan. And yeah, thank you all. You may have seen in the program, my colleague Tamlin Patel is regretfully feeling ill this morning. So it's my real pleasure to join these two powerhouse women up on the stage. I did promise Tamlin that I would share that she was not out late last night. And I know that because I checked all the places that Dallas mentioned earlier. I did not see her there. And so, yeah, unfortunately, she is really regretful to miss this opportunity. But welcome to BC IROC. Really appreciate you both joining us here. And so today we're going to talk about powering BC's future and BC's evolving energy landscape. And so, of course, I'm joined with Charlotte Mitha, President and CEO of BC Hydro, and Michelle Carr, the CEO and Commissioner of the BC Energy Regulator. So when this panel was putting together, we were really thinking about how do we layer on the generation opportunities along with the energy regulation that really has to work hand in hand. BC, as we all know, is experiencing a period of significant change in its energy landscape. We've got growing demand from communities, from industry, electrification initiatives, and major resource projects, really creating a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges. And at the same time, Indigenous nations are increasingly shaping the future of energy and resource development through leadership, through partnerships, ownerships, and stewardship. So I'd like to ask you two ladies to start by introducing yourself, and maybe Charlotte, we'll start with you. Your role at BC Hydro, some of the key priorities and initiatives that you're advancing.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I really appreciate being invited to this. I am the CEO and President of BC Hydro, have been since August, so this is my first IROC conference. And I have still a lot of relationships to build myself in the new role, so bear with me if we haven't had a chance to have a conversation. But totally committed to conversations going forward. Big part of being new in a role is listening, and definitely committed to that. But what I would say is priorities for BC Hydro. So obviously, from a short-term perspective, it's providing the reliable, safe, low-cost power that we've always provided. And I always say this, we're 99%, 98% clean, 99.9% reliable, have some of the lowest rates in North America, if not the lowest, along with other big hydro utilities in Canada. But we, BC Hydro, we're just stewards of this system. The system is owned by all of British Columbians, everybody in this room. And as much as we're focused on obviously meeting the supply needs or the demand needs of the province in the short term, I always say to everybody, we're building the system of 2050. And so that's going to take a lot of decision-making, good investments, and a lot of people have to be at the table of that so that we can all be proud of the system that we're going to have in 2050, which we're committed to being as renewable as it is today, 98% renewable today, and if not more renewable. And so, we're going to need lots of expertise, wisdom, and conversation, dialogue, partnerships to build that 2050 system that we can be proud of. So that's the priority.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. And Michelle, could you please introduce yourself and share a little bit about your role at BC Energy Regulator and the work your organization is focused on?
Great, thanks so much, and good morning, everybody. So great to see you today, and so happy to be at my second IROC. And I came back from the last one to my team saying what a positive energy and what a great conference it was for meeting different people, and grateful to be on this Nagmuk territory again and meeting with many of you again today. The BC Energy Regulator is a life cycle regulator of energy resources in British Columbia, What that means is we oversee the public and environmental safety of energy resources from pre-planning through to restoration. We oversee a range of energy resources, upstream oil and gas, LNG, geothermal, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, and within the last year, prescribed transmission lines as well as renewable projects, wind and solar. So we've got an array of energy resources that we oversee, obviously working closely with the various sectors. A couple of key priorities for us. One is in less than a year, and this time last year in IROC, we didn't have the legislation passed yet that allowed us to be the regulator of prescribed transmission lines, wind and solar. And so in a very expedited way, we worked within 10 months to get a regulation in place that allowed us to accept applications for wind and solar projects, and really did that in an expedited way, and looking forward to talking about that a little bit more detail this morning. The other thing I'll mention is, and many of you would have been here a couple days ago when Premier Eby talked about the Look West document. It's got a range of priority projects. My organization oversees and is a primary regulator for 21 out of the 34 priority projects. So we're very busy on a range of really important issues for British Columbians, for nations, and communities.
Thank you so much. And as we look forward in the responding to the energy landscape as things are changing, with BC Hydro planning for unprecedented growth in electricity, what are the primary drivers behind that growth, and what does that demand mean for future competitiveness in the province?
Yeah, well, and it's an exciting time to be in resource industries right now, this economic development mandate from the government, and the role that energy plays in it are super important. And as you may have seen, the load forecasts that we're putting out now are way more aggressive. We come off a period of sort of 10-year very flat load growth, virtually no load growth on the system, to this pivot, just starting actually even just a couple of years ago, where we're seeing demand mainly driven by the industrial sector, but also driven by population growth and electrification. And we're now predicting 50% load increase by 2050 from an energy perspective, and just as importantly, a 44%, that's a bit probably over-precise, because forecasting is inherently difficult, but around a 45% increase in the capacity needs on the system, which means that on that cold winter day, we're going to need 50% or 45% more capacity on the system to meet that load. And so, we have to think about, all of us have to think about how we're going to serve that load in the future. And like I said, what is a system going to look like? And from the planning we're putting out, we're working with many of you in the room on this, the way we're going to meet that supply is really three main areas. Conservation is the first one. Efficiency, demand-side management, still the best environmental approach, the best cost approach, and it allows customers and people who use the system to save money and manage their own environmental footprint. So we're doing $1 billion on that over the next 3 years. And we're trying to also, the second is optimize our own system, get every electron we can out of the existing generating stations and the transmission. And then third is this build piece. And that includes everything from power calls to transmission build-outs. And again, that's where all the opportunity lies in terms of partnerships, particularly with First Nations, your role in decision-making on that. Again, not just from a project implementation perspective, but backing way up in terms of what are the right supply choices to meet that energy demand that's on the system. So we have lots underway, a massive $36 billion 10-year capital plan. So what's always great when you're trying to form relationships and really meet our absolute responsibility around economic reconciliation, it's really nice to have a lot going on so that we can actually do things that are meaningful in that, everything from, like I said, co-decision making to partnerships. And we can get into a little bit more on some of the great progress there.
Thank you so much. And so speaking to that build piece, Michelle, the BCER sits at that intersection of energy development, public confidence, and environmental stewardship. So how's your team at the Regulator adapting to support both responsible development at the pace of change that we're seeing in the province? You guys seem to have taken on a lot of the load.
There's been a lot, and it's been increasingly so since I've been in the role. I find it really exciting, but it also requires a high degree of responsibility to focus on the range of accountabilities that we have in place for us. And that for us is embedded both in our strong regulatory framework that allows us to literally step into the shoes of multiple different ministries and issue the range of permits and authorizations that a project may need. It's a very efficient process, but allows us to have a good line of sight to a proposed project and the impacts from that project-based perspective. The other thing that we're grounded in is our values and our culture. We're a 28-year organization, a Crown corporation, that was set up to focus on delivery and regulation of energy resources. And we believe that we are problem solvers, and we focus on being both nimble and focused on the issues that we have in front of us. Within our organization, I've set out the direction that we really, at this period of high degree of change for everybody, have two non-negotiables. The first non-negotiable is streamlining permitting while maintaining standards. And the second is enhancing our safety and compliance focus. In terms of the streamlining, there's a lot of focus on the importance of predictability and pace for decision making. Absolutely agree with that. But the standards are equally important. And I would argue the changes that we've brought into place, such as being more efficient internally, hiring for the right frontline positions that can provide the degree of oversight needed, looking at providing clarity for proponents around what they need to submit to us, as well as working with nations to co-develop mitigation measures, guidance, so that there's clarity around what is being expected. In addition, the enhancement around our safety and compliance. We know that in British Columbians, we value the importance of strong oversight while maintaining that speed. Proponents talk to us around the importance of that, as do nations themselves. So we've worked to increase our transparency around compliance enforcement. We now post all of our inspection reports. We are focused on agreements with nations. So for example, I know there's a great panel yesterday about wood fiber in Eagle Mountain. We have a coordination agreement with Squamish Nation as a regulator around compliance enforcement on the ground. And the importance of all of these pieces together enable us to adapt and provide the degree of predictability that everybody expects and needs during this period of time.
Thanks so much, Michelle. So I think as we're talking, we're starting to hear those themes of partnerships come out. And so Charlotte, as we're seeing in the last two calls for power, a really big equity ownership stake requirement for Indigenous nations. So now that we're seeing nations interested not only in consultation, but now in ownership, long-term revenue participation, and leadership roles, how's BC Hydro adapting its approach to support economic reconciliation? And I guess more importantly, like, what can we expect to see in the future?
Yes, so much opportunity here. And again, I just want to emphasize that, you know, we're open to all the options. We want to, you know, keep, I think it was on the previous panel, just keep at the table talking about all the possibilities out there. I mean, I think we are really making some significant progress on what real partnerships look like. And I'll talk about a couple of them. This huge $36 billion and growing capital plan, it's got everything from distribution, transmission, generation, expansions, but also reinvestment in the system. And we do literally billions of dollars of procurement for the First Nations. And that's great. But what we're trying to do is move well beyond those kinds of things into backing up the plan and full transparency on the plan, input into the plan, so that, again, it's sort of a co-creation, full transparency on kind of what BC Hydro is doing. So that's, you know, that's one area, the big $36 billion plan has huge partnership opportunities. You know, Power Call, like you said, super pleased that the 14 successful projects in the 2 power calls all have over 50% First Nations equity in it. That's huge. Of course, North Coast Transmission Line is another big transmission build. We're still in negotiations on phase 1 and phase 2 on that, but you know, both have either a co-develop, will both have a co-ownership model. One of the phases has a co-development model. Really new for us, learnings all around, but again, really pushing on these new models of partnership. You know, Haida Gwaii, the Haida have developed a solar battery option to get diesel reduction. We power a lot of Haida Gwaii through diesel. And we are in a power purchase agreement with them, 100% owned by the Haida on the power supply there, going to solar and batteries. And again, a real sort of like a partnership and co-development approach to it. It's not just a commercial deal across the table. Here's a price, you know, sign on the dotted line. There's tons of technical risk. There's tons of financial risk, especially in some of these areas like the non-integrated areas where you've got small systems and you're trying new technologies. And so if you're really a partner at the table on this future of renewable supply for both the big system and the smaller distribution systems we have, you have to have a sort of sharing of risk in those. And we have lots of expertise at BC Hydro on the technical side. Again, really good to go into these partnerships with a real sharing of that expertise and risk. And then I would say, you know, even on the conservation side, and I keep talking about the conservation side because it's just so important from an environmental footprint perspective. And we have, as part of this $1 billion plan, a really big Indigenous piece to that, really focused on Indigenous communities. But again, very open to the design of those programs. I mean, again, it's not going to be just about one size fits all. And the plan needs scrutiny both at the conceptual sort of lens, like does this whole plan for the future energy system in BC look reasonable and good and meeting the objectives, right down to the individual program project details. And so, and that's why it takes an enormous amount of collaboration in order to meet what I call is the moment we have right now, which is this huge economic development mandate in front of us and the opportunity to shape an energy system that can supply that economic development mandate and bring ultimately prosperity to BC.
Thanks, Charlotte. I mean, it is incredibly exciting, the opportunities that are before us. And Michelle, from that regulatory perspective, meaningful engagement and relationship building, they definitely start a long time before the application meets your desk. So could you describe maybe some of the characteristics of projects and proponents that are getting partnerships right? What are you hoping to see?
Well, I'll go back to the description of our mandate, which is being a life cycle regulator. And that enables us to work in partnership with nations throughout all stages, well before a project comes in, and the importance of our work in engaging when we're building our regulations, when we're building guidance, when we're building mitigation measures, right at that upfront stage, that engagement piece. The other aspect that we work with nations is when a project comes in, what are the key interests? And really exciting to see the Indigenous knowledge that is being incorporated into applications coming into us. We also conduct compliance enforcement and monitoring, so there's that aspect. And because we look at end of life, there are many areas that we engage with nations on in terms of restoration. We also know that many First Nations are proponents, and several of you are in the room, and so exciting to see the discussion on the panels over the last couple of days around that. And so nations as proponents bring a unique perspective and bring those values and that work in place before an application comes into us. And I know we've got our first wind application in, and others are to come. And I'm really excited to hear from my team the different innovations and the different ways that we can incorporate that and work together through the regulatory process. And the hard work that nations put in as proponents into that work. The other thing I will say is the role of a proponent, and we've issued something called pre-engagement requirements. The first time that a nation should not hear about a project should not be from the BC Energy Regulator. That is not setting things up for success. And so we require proponents to pre-engage, and when an application comes into us, that's when our expectation is that they would have already conducted that engagement. But then kind of taking a 10,000-foot view, a core purpose in our legislation is meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And that weaves through the fabric of how we conduct our work and the importance that we play on those long-term relationships. We are going to be, as a life cycle regulator, engaging with a nation for, it could be decades. And so that importance of personal relationships and those long-term relationships are really critical around ensuring that we are focused on the areas of greatest interest. One of the things we do is support our employees to spend time with nations, to go to cultural days, to go to conferences like this. Our aim is not to be an aloof regulator. I don't know if any regulators aim to be aloof, but we are deliberate. I am deliberate around trying to ensure that our staff know that they have the support and really the expectation to take the time and learn about things on the ground together with nations.
Great, thank you so much. So the theme of the IROC conference is working together with the land. And it's one that's resonated many years since the conference was founded. And so if we think about that and the tremendous opportunity ahead, we also know that there are some real challenges. So a question for both of you, and one of you can volunteer to go first, is what do you think are the challenges that lay ahead of us, and how can we and everyone in this room work together to address them?
Well, it's funny, I was just looking at the Slido questions, and I think they actually present some of the biggest challenges to think about. So I wouldn't mind just tackling a couple of these as part of where we have to work together, but also just the big challenges. And this idea of, getting in front of the potentially climate change and how that impacts, which is largely a hydro-based system and very reliant on precipitation and snowpacks. What I would say to the room is we have a very resilient system right now with these very large reservoirs that can store up to 3 years of water. It makes our system, well, first of all, it's part of the reason we're low cost is because we can buy cheap energy when it's available, store it, and then use it for when we need it. And that actually keeps our rates in BC 17% lower than they would otherwise be if we didn't have that sort of trading ability and that ability to import and export. And so, one of the big challenges ahead and where partnership is so important is this cost piece, right? It's so expensive to build projects right now. You're probably finding that. And how we're going to make, first of all, the right decision on what projects to build, and what kind of energy to procure, and also just efficiently building them is going to take really good partners who are in it together. But I just want to assure people that on sort of the supply side and the decisions we're making there, certainly we're doing climate modeling and water inflow modeling around how that could affect our system in the future. And it is quite complicated. We know temperatures are going up. We're not sure what the water's doing. We could end up, like we have this year, excellent precipitation and snowpack where our big reservoirs are. BC Hydro is fine from a supply perspective this year. Even though some other areas are experiencing drought. But we are looking at, the future energy system and what climate change could do to that. And we're also, looking at what are the big next projects? So there's a question, new large dam projects. I can tell you we've got nothing on the books, that BC Hydro internally is working on in terms of a new large dam. We've got some 1980 studies. There's the Pamathco project that was brought forward to us as a potential larger dam project. But yeah, that is a question. if we're looking at all these other we have to look at everything right now. That's what we've been told, because the demand projections are so high. If we're going to make good decisions, we just have to understand what's technically and economically possible out there. And so, yeah, right now we're being asked to look at everything, but we certainly don't have a large hydro dam project on the books right now.
Thanks so much. And Michelle, what are some of the bigger challenges that you're seeing lying ahead for you?
There's so much interest in the energy space for our country's security, economy, and there's multiple forces taking place. I hear over and over again, and BC's not unique in this, that the role of an effective permitting process can play in terms of attracting capital and enabling economic projects to proceed. And the importance in British Columbia of those proceeding in a way that is respectful to First Nations, that ensures that the environment is protected and that public safety is at the core. We have mandate direction to accelerate our decision-making while maintaining standards. And the while maintaining standards is such an important aspect of that. I say to my team that it would actually be relatively easy to just go fast. And we've seen what's happened in the past when we've just gone fast. The more difficult challenge that we have in front of all of us is, how do you go fast while maintaining those standards? I think our team has demonstrated that you can do that, but it requires a lot of work together, and looking at all areas of opportunity to be efficient, not just within my organization, but in engagement with industry and in working with First Nations. All three parties do not have like extra time to spend on things that are that don't matter. And over time, regulatory processes can become kind of a layering. So how do we ensure that through, for example, government's decision to remove the big E, big A environmental assessment and provide direction to the BC Energy Regulator to undertake environmental reviews in a focused way, how can we ensure that we are working together with quality applications that include partnerships at the forefront and that are done in a really focused way? And that will only be done through a lot of hard work and a lot of collaboration.
That's a great answer. Thank you. So we'll look at a couple more of the audience Slido questions, and maybe we'll get through some of these in a fairly timely fashion. So the first one, and either of you can comment, is what technological barriers does your organization face, and what solutions are you exploring soon?
I'd like to tackle that one. There's a lot of focus on AI, and certainly that's an aspect of our work, but all organizations have their systems that are in place. We have an application system that comes in. And over years, and as our mandate has expanded, it's been tinkered with, and we've added different elements. And so finally you get this like fairly unwieldy system. And when we ask our staff, like, what is the thing that could enable you to move more quickly in your work as it relates to technology, their first thing that they answer isn't, I need a new app or I need AI. It's, please fix the system that we have. It's frustrating when I'm spending 3 days to do something that could take me 2 days, for example. And so I talked earlier around the non-negotiables. The first non-negotiable is accelerating decision-making while maintaining standards. And so we have focused the majority of our capital plan on addressing the permitting technology barriers within our system, as well as exploring AI in an appropriate way. So we're really excited around the work that we're doing. We've hired a chief digital officer who is looking at the suite of measures that we can bring into place. And my expectation is this time next year, that you will, that those that are engaging with us will find it a much more agreeable and streamlined and focused process from the technology perspective, but then also the work behind the scenes to address the barriers and allow our staff to focus on the issues of greatest importance.
Great, thank you. And Charlotte?
Sure. So, yeah, I'll tackle this one not from an organization, but from a system perspective. And try and answer about 4 or 5 of these questions that are on Slido right now, because they're all so good. And they are the technology questions we have in front of us. So we are always trying to sort of first look at how technology can help us get more out of the existing system, because using the existing system, like I said, conservation is always the cheaper, lower environmental footprint option. So we are getting into the space of virtual power plants, the ability of using demand-side management techniques, load control, all of that to create a virtual power plant. Our DSM program is right now the equivalent of an 800 megawatt power plant. Like, you think of what it takes to build an 800 megawatt power plant, and we're going to achieve that through some very creative technology, everything from EV batteries back onto the system, solar, rates that encourage taking load off the peak. All of those technology choices are in front of us, and we're trying to embrace all of them. We also need industry to help us, because we are not experts on this new technology. We're a big utility. We can move slower sometimes. We're trying to be way more innovative, but we rely on industry to really pull us in that direction. Choices like nuclear, I would just say, nuclear, I think it's a good option from a GHG reduction perspective. Just in BC, we have a lot of other alternatives before we would go for a nuclear option. It's not allowed right now under legislation. But, obviously policies can change. But right now, we have way better options from a cost and footprint perspective than nuclear that we need to push a bit more. But also, we need to stay aligned to that industry. So we have people that are watching all that, because we have to stay open to all of this and not make decisions. Again, when I talked about the options in front of us before, we have to stay open. And the economics keep changing on these projects too, and their reliability. So geothermal's one we're really interested from a technology perspective as well. Why wouldn't we not embrace that? Lots of technical challenges with those, and to get the cost down. So we are open to it all. There was a question on batteries. Absolutely on batteries. The plan is certainly for Vancouver Island is our first spot to put batteries for obvious sort of backup reasons, supporting peak, but also just supporting if we lose some generation on Vancouver Island. And I think what's key here is that, like I said before, we include all of it, because you cannot meet a 50% load increase without having a bit of everything, especially if we want to maintain the absolute focus on keeping a renewable grid here. And again, renewable choices will always be our first choice and so we have lots to exploit there. I think there was another question on a technology, but yeah, I'll stop there.
No, that's great. And for our moderator, those top 2 questions have been answered. And so I'm going to pull my phone because I have a few more of those. So now you'll have to listen very carefully. What does success look like for BC's energy transition? And how do you think we'll know when we're on track?
Yeah, so I think if, like I said before, we have a system we should all be proud of right now, from a reliability, a cost, and a clean perspective. That is the goal, to maintain that. And I think if we have larger support, if First Nations communities say they agree with the plans we have in front of us for the system, that would be success. Municipalities, if we are meeting the load, and I know there was a question on the queue, about the queue, the industrial queue, and are we turning customers away? We are not turning customers away right now. The queue, I think you've probably seen reports, it's 7,000 megawatts. That's the funnel. There's always a very large queue, and we work with every single customer through that queue to make sure that we can connect them. That queue is bigger than ever, for sure, but success means that we are meeting that economic development mandate, connecting all those customers, connecting them in a renewable way, maintaining the reliability, and have the support of First Nations and the involvement well beyond past participation levels, but real active participation in that energy system going forward. I think that's what success would look like.
Great. And before we turn to our wrap-up questions, Michelle, did you want to add anything onto that one?
Yeah, that's a very powerful question. I love that question, and I've been sitting here thinking about the different ways that I could answer it. Within British Columbia, within Canada, within the world, we have the strongest environmental standards that are in place and the highest expectations for Indigenous involvement. I think we're on track around ensuring that our methane regulations are the most stringent in the world, and looking at the enhancements of renewables and the range of energy resources that are part of our mix. I'd have to really think more deeply around like what would be a specific success. I think it's a journey, and we're on it, and we're leaders in the world. We had a delegation from Argentina in our office on Monday, learning about how do we oversee LNG, how do we oversee the range of energy resources, and the regulatory framework that we have in place that allows us to be as effective as we are.
Thank you. So as we do look to wrap up our session, I've got a two-part question to finish us. So firstly, what are you most excited for in the next 6 to 12 months? And then for all the First Nations leaders, the entrepreneurs, the economic development organizations in today's audience who are looking to seize emerging opportunities, what advice would you offer them? And so let's start with Michelle, and then we'll go to Charlotte.
I've worked in the energy sector and in environmental regulation for most of my career. And I don't know that I've seen a time when BC's natural resources, more broadly, have been in such a spotlight and seen and acknowledged by many in society as critical to the success of our country, of our province, of regions, of communities. So I'm very excited that we are in the spotlight. You don't get that very often. I know there's different times in my career when there's not been a lot of interest in natural resources, and I think that recognition of the importance of those is so exciting. The challenge is there's a lot of noise out there as well, and how do we work together and put our heads down and do the quiet work, the on-the-ground look at mitigations, the spending time together to identify better ways of doing things and better look at the impacts, but also the mitigations. Ignoring the noise and putting our shoulders against that and working together is how we're going to get through that. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to tell our story. We have huge successes, and that's why, again, I love this conference, because it talks about the successes. We spend a lot of time talking about what things aren't working, so we need to quietly do the work, and then we need to celebrate the successes, because we've got a lot to be proud of.
That's absolutely true. And Charlotte will lead you to close it up. I'll remind you, what are you most excited for in the next 6 to 12 months? And then what advice do you have for the audience to seize these emerging opportunities?
Yeah, I'm just so excited about all the renewable options on supply that we have in this province. We're really lucky that way, and as challenging as it will be to meet the demand, we're going to do it just because we have this plethora of options. The key will be building them in the schedule needed. And I saw there was a concern about surplus, or, right now, I mean, this year we have a surplus. We're going to be exporting power this year, but, in 5 years we're going to be tighter. And so I think I'm just excited about the opportunities that creates and the prosperity prospects for the province, because they need that power. And I would just say to the audience here, like the quality of the questions is so high. This is a very informed group, and we have our integrated resource plan that's going to be looked at by the BCUC. It talks about all the forecast scenarios, including the most aggressive, how we're going to fill that supply stack in order to meet that exciting demand. So ask your questions, weigh in, support the things you like about the plan, and just continue to stay involved in that. Like I said, it's your system. We want to make sure we're all proud of it, and we need all your expertise at the table.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us here today and sharing so much wisdom. Please join me in a round of applause, and I'll pass it over to our MC.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for stepping in to moderate that session last minute, and thank you very much to Charlotte and to Michelle for such an engaging conversation and for sharing so much important information. It is now my pleasure to introduce our second keynote address of the day, Stephen Rayner, who there he is. Stephen is the Interim Executive Director for Clean Energy BC. He's also an elected councillor for the Huu-ay-aht First Nation. He's going to deliver an excellent keynote speech for us all, so let's give him a warm round of applause.